EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. That's John McMullen. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Please give us a follow on Twitter at RealZander and at JF McMullen. Wednesday now, everybody, moving right through the week and beginning to prepare for Week 4 in Tampa versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Doing well. Gearing up for a big day, big Wednesday, normal Wednesday for a Sunday game. So very long day.
Eagles getting back on that Sunday to Sunday schedule, which is good.
Yeah, that part is traditional. Although I don't know if you can call it traditional anymore. There's so much upheaval in the NFL schedule, but it's good for the coaches and players. They like it. So from the preparation standpoint, like Nick was saying the other week, it's like, to us, it's a Wednesday on a Thursday and, go on and on with the Monday night game against Atlanta. So it's good to have a normal NFL week, which is rare for this Eagles team, which plays a lot of, but that's good. When you're relevant, you play a lot of games in different windows. So that's always a good thing as well.
Yep. What is the schedule for today? You go down there, they have practice, you're open. Is there any media availability? What's the schedule look like for the day?
Yeah, I mean, the locker room's going to be open today for the first time of the week. Nick's going to talk at 12:10ish. Locker room's going to be open before practice, about 2:15. Practice is at 3:10. And then Jalen Hurts talks after practice, so that's going to be near 5 o'clock, a little bit before 5 o'clock. So, so they've shifted their schedule, pushed it back a little bit later for practices, and that's a big thing. Vic Fangio requested that. He likes to have meetings before practice, not after practice. So that's a little bit of a shift for the Eagles this year. But so they have a walkthrough in the morning, practice in the afternoon. And that's their normal practice schedule.
Johnny Mac yesterday spoke with the coordinators a little bit. There's a lot of people looking for the updates on where this team is injury-wise. A lot of guys went down. We'll start there. Are there any updates yet on the injuries coming into this week? Any idea of who's in and who's out coming into Week 4 versus the Bucs?
No. Has anybody listened to Nick Sirianni for the past 2 years? Really 4, but really amped it up. Like, he's not giving you anything on injuries period. And the first injury status report doesn't come out until today after practice. So,
well, they did make a couple roster moves. I guess the only one you know anything about is Britton Covey. They put him on
Britton, we already confirmed has a shoulder injury, which we mentioned yesterday on the show. He's going to be on injured reserve, and they made that move official. So they brought John Ross back to the practice squad, and obviously he was here was here way back in rookie minicamp trying out and impress the Eagles in an attempt to make the big comeback, and didn't work out, but now he's back. You see that a lot with that aspect of it. Jack Stoll was put on the 53-man roster, which has always been. He probably, Jack would have been ahead of EJ Jenkins if he didn't get hurt when he came back in practice. So, he's going to be the third tight end, and that's probably a better situation for the Eagles. So he's back on the 53. But as far as the injuries, no, he's not giving you anything on injuries. He hasn't admitted anything about Britton Covey. The only reason we know about Britton Covey is because other avenues, let's say it like that. The Eagles are not up front when it comes to injuries because of competitive advantage. Now, with Lane Johnson, Devontae Smith, it's out of their hands anyway. So from that standpoint, by NFL rules, they're not allowed to discuss guys in the concussion protocol. So that party gets a pass on. But yeah, I mean, you see it, he wouldn't say anything about AJ after AJ said he was going to be out for 2 weeks. He told Lisa Salters that. Yeah, I mean, that's just, he's not going to It's not going to give any inch on injuries.
Yeah, good stuff. They did sign Jack Stoll. I mentioned that to the active roster. Does that give you any indication that they maybe a 12 personnel week? Any idea what they're thinking with that? I mean, they didn't take any injuries to the tight ends, but they elevated Jack Stoll to the active roster. Maybe need a blocking tight end out there with some of these big receiver losses. Any indication on what that could mean? The signing of Jack Stoll.
No. I mean, they were very light. They were going to eventually add a third tight end at
Yeah,
some
they are
point
light,
during the
right?
season on the 53-man roster. That was just sort of at the initial cut down, try to manipulate, try to not have to put younger guys through waivers. And they piecemealed it a little bit different, kept 2 tight ends. Then they brought Jack Stoll back from the Giants, and he got hurt that first week, that initial week he was back, and that's the only reason E.J. Jenkins got elevated before him. So it's one of those things where if he didn't get hurt, he probably would have been elevated for 3 games, and then they would have had to put him on the 53-man roster. So you have an injury, and you open a spot because of Britton's injury. And, yeah, I wouldn't get too caught up on them not – I think a lot of people looked at it the way you were trying to frame it, or I think the way you were trying to frame it is that, oh, it has something to do with the receiver. No, they were always going to add a third tight end, and the roster spot just happened to open, and they elevated Jack. So as far as if AJ can play, if Devontae can play, obviously that solves itself. If they can't, or if one of them can and one of them can't, obviously Paris Campbell would be the first up. They have 5 receivers on the practice squad, so they have plenty of bodies.
Yeah.
To be able to line up as much in 11 personnel as you want. The question is, can it be effective if those bodies are Jahan Dotson, Paris Campbell, and Johnny Wilson? Probably not. I mean, if you're going to be
Saquon, get
honest with
ready.
yourself. Yeah, Saquon, get ready.
JAKIB
Get ready.
members, get ready. Another jersey
Get ready.
giveaway
Get
is on the
ready to
way.
join and become a member. Because, yeah, it's going to have to be a big, same as last week, big Saquon, big Dallas Goedert day, if that's the case. Now, if you have one of the two, which is a distinct possibility, you could better piecemeal it. But you still, I mean, look, one of the things I'm very disappointed with this team is their inability to, whether you want to call it style points, they're very clunky when AJ's not on the field. They're just clunky. And he's a great player. You can't replace him, but you got to do a better job of persevering when he's not on the field. And hopefully this is it, and he'll be on the field for the rest of the year whenever he comes back from this hamstring injury. But it's just ugly when he's not on the field. And for all the talk, the great offensive line, the great running back, the great quarterback, the great tight end, shouldn't be this clunky. Shouldn't.
Well, it is clunky. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I will say they did get the passing game going a lot better last week. You know, Devontae had a decent game. Dallas Goedert obviously had a big game, but a lot of them are chunk plays. Definitely still some clunk in the offense with out AJ Brown. Johnny Mac, let's talk about the coordinators. You met with them yesterday. By the way, we have a great show planned for everybody. We have Mike Gill coming up in hour number 1 and Brandon Lee Goutwin in hour number 2. So 2 great guests here on the show. Hit that like button if you guys are enjoying the show. Appreciate all you guys for being here. Johnny Mac, let's talk coordinators. You met with them yesterday. Your key takeaways from what you heard from the coordinators yesterday, if anything at all.
Well, it's a win, so everybody's happy. But, you know, there's things you want to flesh out. I mean, one thing I think Vic Fangio was obviously always he's playing the big room, as they say. He's, you know, and they lead him off, which I disagree with. He should go last. But poor Michael Clay's got to go last. You know, I always say if you want to stop the run, you can stop the run. And he rolled out this typically he uses 50-40 fronts. He rolled out the 6-man front. It's interesting. He first did that Super Bowl 53, I believe, when the Rams played the Patriots, and Bill Belichick completely shut down Sean McVay. Remember that was the explosive Rams offense, the coming out party where Sean McVay was the guy and the NFL became the guy, and everybody would interview Sean McVay guys. And if you had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, you can get a coaching interview. He was the it guy, still is in a lot of ways, but Belichick kind of embarrassed him on the biggest stage, and he did it with this six-man front. And ironically, he copied it. He copied it from Vic Fangio, who was the defensive coordinator in Chicago at the time. And Chicago had a great defense. So the Rams were scoring 30-plus points every week. I think their low mark was 24. Their high mark was in the 50s. They played the Bears. They were 11-1 when they played the Bears. They had scored 30 points in 10 of those games. And they went into Chicago, and he rolled out this six-man front to deal with their stretch plays, their outside zone plays. And they scored 6 points. Chicago beat them, I think, 15-6. And then they went right back to scoring. Ironically, they played the Eagles the next week, and they only scored like 23. That might have been their second worst offensive performance. But then it was right back to normal. And 23 is fine. But then they're back up over 30s, and they're going to the Super Bowl. And Belichick rolls it out and copies it and completely shuts them down again. So he rolled that out against the Saints because he was very concerned. They were, I think, averaging 185 yards on the ground coming in. The Eagles were giving up like 156 or something. So it looked terrible on paper. But if you want to stop the run, you can stop the run. Just put a bunch of people up front, and he did it. And the Eagles did it for the most part, even though the Saints were disciplined and kept running it. It's only, I think, 3.1 yards per carry. Now the question is, could they hold up on the back end? And they did. So there's the first big impression of Vic Fangio, man. He's gonna do some stuff that other people won't do, other people can't do, other people don't have the confidence to do. And for 1 week, he completely shut down the most explosive offense in the NFL, at least early in the season. Pretty impressive. So that was number one. Now you can't do it every week, and that's also the beauty of Vic Fangio. They need to get more consistent. They weren't playing well over the first 2 games, and it's still, because I don't want to get hyper focused on coaching, because I think people are way too hyper focused on coaching. I mean, it still had more to do with Jalen Carter. So whatever they did to light a fire under Jalen Carter, whether it was benching him, whether it was a good talk to, whether it was having Dom shadow him everywhere, whatever, keep doing it. Because if he plays like that, they're going to have a good defense.
Yeah, he's that good of a player. So obviously he had a massive game this weekend. Good stuff there from Johnny Mac. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Hit that like button this morning for us here on Birds 365. Give Johnny Mac a follow on Twitter. The #1 Eagles beat reporter at JF McMullen. Give me a follow at Real Zander. Coming up next, everybody, Mike Gill. I see Mike in the green room. We're going to get to Mike Gill coming up next after the break. Before I do that, I want to tell you guys about our great partner in BetUS. The newest sponsor here on JAKIB Sports. They are launching a massive YouTube promo for you guys. Go check this out. Using the code YouTube150, you get up to 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and 125% on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more. A great promo from BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. And get your deposit in. Tell them JAKIB Sports sent you and use that code YouTube150. So Birds 365 will be back in 3 minutes with Mike Gill.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLEX, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to the Birds 365. Joined now by Mike Gill at Mike Gill Show. Joining the show now. Mike, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you on this Wednesday. How you doing?
I'm doing quite well. The Eagles won. We should all be happy, right?
Yeah, everybody's happy, Mike. You know how that goes. How's it been on the radio and the people on the text line? Because I get a lot of fourth down crap. I'm like, did they win the game? Did they? I don't. The hyper focus on, and to me, and I'm trying to elevate this conversation. To me, it's a theme. Like literally, the entire NFL followed the Eagles' lead when it came to aggressiveness. Like they changed the game in 2017, which predated obviously Nick Sirianni with the aggressiveness and the going for it on fourth down. You saw what it did for Detroit last year, and Dan Campbell went through the same thing.
I think you look at Atlanta on Sunday night. They won the game the week before because the Eagles made some aggressive decisions and they didn't work out. Atlanta didn't say, well, they did it, so we shouldn't. They gave up 6 points in that game. They lost by 5. They went for it on fourth down. I see what you're saying too, John. Is I watch the games all the time now, and I see it, there's that high school coach somewhere in Mississippi. I think he goes for it on
never goes
down.
for it. Yeah,
he never punts. They did a whole Real
yeah.
Sports on him that he never punts, and the league is like turning into this. We're just going to be overly aggressive, and the concept of you're going to have to stop us 4 plays is really starting. And listen, it's a mentality that if you ask a lot of former players, especially offensive players, they like the fact Dallas Goedert said it yesterday. I had Colin Thompson on my show. They want the coaches to show trust in them. They want that. They say it's 4th and 1, believe in us. We'll get it. As opposed to coddle us, and we won't get it, stuff like that. So I don't know. It's a weird dynamic. To answer your first part of the question, what is the reaction? It's mixed. We had a poll question. It was about 50-50. Are you happy with the Eagles win? 54% yes, 49% no. And the no's, I think, are, if you were able to break down the poll and look at the ages, I would imagine they're on that.
Yeah, I should be on the punt the football because of my age in theory. And I'm like, why am I got to be the fourth? It's shocking. It is shocking.
It is, but I think, listen, there was a time where, I was an irrational fan that would just knee-jerk reaction to everything I saw in the moment. And then when you do a job like this and you talk to people that played the game or work in the game and you get more information, I might not like I say this all the time to you, John. You don't not like Sirianni's decision. You don't like the way the game is played today.
Exactly. I say it all the time. You're judging results. I said,
no, it's not. It's the result of the way that the game has changed, and your reaction is, I don't like the change. And then you're blaming Sirianni for the change. It's not Sirianni who's really changed. It's the game that has changed, and Sirianni's just a part of it. It's an organizational philosophy of, we are going to use analytics and we're going to go for it and we're going to be aggressive. A lot of people would say, well, see, the one thing I don't like about it is analytics don't tell you what the score is, how much time's left. Like, does it say, hey, go for it on 4th down and 3 from the 39 when the score is 7-6? Or does it say, don't go for it if it's 13-3, or go for it if it's 30?
But I would say that's the ironic thing, Mike, because he doesn't always go for it. And then it becomes, well, why did he go on 4th and 3 here when he didn't go 4th and 3 there? Because he is taking into account what he calls his own studies and whatever. And he's taking into account the game. Could be a situation like New Orleans lost their starting center. Numbers aren't going to tell you that. They might have been more prepared to do some stuff with Eric McCoy than without Eric McCoy. So you have to have a gut feeling as a head coach. And I think that gets in the hot water because everybody's like, well, you go for it on 4th and 3. Doesn't mean you're always going to go for it on 4th and 3. But the overriding fact,
the flip side to that, to me, and I said this Sunday, was the only team that was more poorly coached than the Eagles was New Orleans, because the flip side of not being aggressive was the result of the Saints being so conservative. They didn't trust their players at all, and I think it cost them the game. Like, the fact that they were so conservative in that game. You're at home. You have this offense that's scoring at will all season long. And for whatever reason on Sunday, you decided that our offense is some Punch and Judy 220 hitter. Like, what was going on there? I don't understand how conservative they got in the game. So I think on the other side, their players are saying, come on, give us a little trust here. And they're punting the ball. They hadn't punted the ball once all season.
They did that the first 15 drives. I think he had like 3 punts coming in.
Not on the Card-led drive.
Yeah.
Card was the quarterback of the offense. So the first team offense had not punted one time all season, and they had a punt fest going on in there. There was a couple times where they could have made a decision, and that might have changed the game. But their coaching decided to go very conservative, and it backfired on them.
There was a game. It was opening weekend. It was the Raiders against the Chargers, and the Raiders had the ball in plus territory with down 6 with 5.5 minutes left, and they didn't convert on 3rd down. And Antonio Pierce punted the football, and defensive guy, defensive minded. He's got timeouts. He's got 5.5 minutes. That's old school football. Punt it, play field position. And I was shocked. I was legitimately shocked. And sure enough, Mike, the Raiders didn't get the ball back. and they lost the game. I think the Chargers went down and scored. They lost the game 22, 23-10, something like that. They had a chance with 4+ minutes left to take the lead and be aggressive. That's what everybody does in this league, to the point where when you don't do it, it stands out. Boy, I say this all the time. The next time somebody comes up to me and says, hey, you know what? The Eagles went for it on 4th down. They got it. But if they keep doing that long term, it's going to hurt them. I'll listen if they want to say a failed 4th down is not the way to go because they didn't like the result of the play. I've not heard that once. I don't expect to hear that in my entire life, Mike.
Yeah, that's the thing is, how about the play they ran? Was it on 4th down, Philadelphia? It was a little pop out pass to Goddard. It was a little slide. He slid out to the flat, and they popped it out to him. And you're thinking, where was that last? If you just do that last week, all of this conversation about what Nick is doing is probably muted somewhat. I'll tell you, though, the part of it that I think he didn't necessarily do himself any favors with was this time standing up on the hill and saying, it was me. I called the play.
No, that was a mistake.
That's a mistake because now you've ignited this of who done it. And the last thing this team and Nick Sirianni needs all season long is a constant who done it every time. Because listen, if you were watching the broadcast, you heard Olsen say it seemed like every time the Eagles had the ball, he kept saying, well, here we go again. There's another decision for Sirianni. It's another 4th down choice or another thing that they're going to have to decide on. The last thing they need after every game is you guys. And you should, by the way, and you should. Poor Jeff McClain, I think, is going to get daggers probably through him at some point. But somebody asking him the questions of who's calling that play and whose decision was it, they did not need to start that.
That was the classic unforced error. That was I don't even say it was a mistake. That was a colossal mistake to open up that Pandora's box. That is just that was.
Now, did Kellen Moore yesterday say that that's normal because it is?
Yes.
Because he has had in San Diego or LA, he had a defensive-minded coach in Brandon Staley. Is Brandon Staley jumping in and calling plays?
Well, what Kellen was trying to explain, I think I think a lot of people believe that any play caller, not just Kellen Moore or Nick Sirianni back when he did it, or Brian Johnson or Shane Steichen, anybody, that they're just doing it fly by the seat of the pants in the moment. Like, oh, this is 98% of it is done during the week. And you got your big play card and you got all your situations laid out, 1st and 10, 1st 15, 3rd and short, 3rd and long, 4th down, got to have it, 4th down. All these things are on that little play sheet. Plays for A.J. Brown, plays for Devontae Smith, your go-to players when they are in the mix. All of it is mapped out. And essentially, you're going to a situation in the game, and you might have 3 or 4 options at your disposal, and you're picking from those particular options. The idea that it's this wild gesticulation where you're just coming up with stuff, and
so it's not John Madden football. You don't have to pick the play like in that moment.
Well, you got to pick the play, but the play's already laid out for you. So you do 97% of it during the week. And what I think Nick is saying is like 4th and short, one of the plays on there. And by the way, I don't agree with the 4th and 1 at the end of the half because of the timing. I didn't think it made sense because of the timing.
Yeah. Now, I think I told you, Zander, I think they really thought that they were going to catch New Orleans.
Yeah, surprise.
Jumped up in the box.
Yeah.
And sweep it to the outside in 15 yards. It was like at the 15-yard line. I think they thought they were going to score a touchdown by catching them off guard. Because realistically, if they get the 1st down,
Then I got to burn the
You got to call
timeout.
timeout, and then what? Are you going to go for it with no timeouts left at like the 13, 14, the 13, 11, 12, 10-yard line? Are you going to throw a pass? Are you going to – I mean, you could then take a sack. You could throw an interception. You could throw one, short of the end zone. So it just doesn't feel like, hey, let's get a yard on a tush push and get a first down here and then just kick the field goal. I feel like he thought they were going to score on that particular play call by catching them off guard.
Yeah. And that particular play call, which they did run last year once, I think, at least once, successfully, was obviously in the game plan. And that was put in the game plan during the week. And I'm with you. I think they were trying to surprise them. And look, if that's 3rd and 1, that's a good play call. Try to surprise them. 4th and 1, if you don't get the first down, you're taking 3 points off the board. So that's why the timing aspect of it is why I didn't like that particular play call. But yeah, I mean, the theme of 4th downs, though, drives me crazy because it has been this team literally has won Super Bowl championship, and they would not have it if they were not aggressive. If Nick Foles doesn't go 4th and 1 to Zach Ertz, you know how that game was going. The Patriots go right down the field, score, game's over. They couldn't stop the Patriots at all. And I still remember talking to Frank Reich after the game about that particular play. And that's when he called, Frank doesn't curse. That's when he called Doug Peterson a flippin' star, because he won't say eppin'. I mean, that was in a lot of ways, obviously, Philly special. People talk about the strip sack. All these are big plays. That might have been the biggest play because if they Antonio Pierce it there, they're in deep, deep trouble. But they seized the moment. They went for it. It has been so successful for them to the point where everybody in the league has copied it, except Antonio Pierce. And I joke because the Raiders do it too. Everybody does it to a certain degree, but Lions #1 have actually surpassed the Eagles. And by the way, they had success that they haven't seen in many, many years because of how aggressive they were. Until it bit them in the ass, and Dan Campbell had to deal with that.
Well, and
it
because
is so short-sighted to me.
The
Mike.
result
really
of the result of the aggressiveness isn't 100% success. That's the issue. I mean, exactly. So if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to be aggressive, but there's going to be failure in there, and some of that failure is going to hinder or impede your success. On Sunday, the failure impeded the Eagles, but it didn't collapse their success. Ultimately, they won the game. Now, in the end, you might look at it through the lens and say, you can't keep making those decisions. It's going to cost you. I think what the Eagles might say, more so than the decisions costing them, is the turnovers. They can't keep losing the turnover battle and win these games. Those decisions will eventually start working out in our favor, and they're going to help us win the games.
Yeah. To me, and I always say, and Mike knows, increase your margin of error. It increases, being aggressive increases your margin of error over the long term. It's proven. That's why everybody does it. That's why everybody has shifted. You mentioned 4 plays, 10 yards.
You guys feel as though the pendulum is maybe starting to shift from a more broad perspective, like across the NFL, just because now everybody, it seems like most people are being aggressive across the league. Is the pendulum shifting, where points might become more of a premium again? I mean, look at the scores across the NFL, a lot of low scoring games.
Yeah. Well, you got a couple factors here. One, offenses have been the spread offenses for the couple years now. And you wonder how much of these defensive teams are starting to say, okay, we're going to start not letting you do that. The offense is now, you're starting to see Baltimore running the ball, Philadelphia running the ball a little bit more. Teams are starting to shift a little bit more back to, all right, you're going to try to take these passing options away from us. You're only going to rush 3 and 4 guys, and you're dropping all these guys. Fine. We're going to start putting, how big are linebackers? Jeremiah Trotter's gone, man. 250-pound linebackers thumping in the middle of the field. They're gone. You got 220-pound guys playing linebacker. So teams are going to start saying, fine, you're going to fill the middle of the field with guys who are smaller. We're going to start running at you. So teams, I think, on defense over the last couple of years, they've started to make the adjustment to dropping more in coverage, showing less blitz, making the quarterback have to get the ball out quickly, everything underneath, come up and tackle. Vic Fangio's kind of style of defense. And the offenses now are saying, okay, you're going to do that. We'll put the ball on the ground more, which obviously keeps the clock running, not as many explosive plays. So I think that's all kind of happening right before our very eyes right now. And part of it is, fine, we're going to take more shots of being aggressive on fourth down. With you having so many smaller bodies out in the field, we're going to try to, on a 4th down and 1, we feel, and we say this all the time, I feel this way. If you're a championship level team, if you really think you're a Super Bowl team, you better be able to get 4th down and 1 when you have to get it. Like, if you can't convert, especially with this offensive line, I got to understand Nick Sirianni saying, we got the best or second or third best offensive line in football. We need a freaking yard. Let's go. Like, so I can understand him having that gall, to have that assertion, to want to make that call. But I think that's what's going on a lot, Zander. Plus, you got some awful quarterback play.
Yeah, that. It starts with the quarterback play.
Yeah,
but you're right. Everything Mike said is right, contributes to it, but it's the awful quarterback play. The points down is about the awful quarterback play.
Yeah, we got $50+ million quarterbacks that stink on it. It's not even just the rookies and the bottom of the barrel guys.
Let's go to the perfect example of this is Carolina. They were the worst team in the league by far for 2 weeks. They put in, a low-level NFL starter. At this point, Andy Dalton is a low back end of the rankings. If you're doing a quarterback rankings list, he's 30th, right?
But he knows how to play.
But he knows how he can play NFL football. He's competent NFL player. Is he a franchise NFL player? No. But he's competent. He's had success in this league. He knows the speed of the game. He's seen stuff. And all he had to do was put him in the game. And that team that looked by far the worst team won a football game against a team that had just gone on the road and won in Baltimore. That team they beat went on the road and won in Baltimore. And all they did was put Andy Dalton in the game, and they won a football game. Now, every once in a while, there are exceptions. Everybody thinks Jaden Daniels an exception after one game. They didn't look very good in the first 2 games, but he played exceptionally well. And by the way, I've said here and on my show, I think Washington has a chance to be scary if that kid is the quarterback that kind of rises from this group. And right now he had an awesome game, and I'm kind of cheering for him.
You know what happens there, and you saw it last week with C.J. Stroud, because C.J. Stroud's that guy, right?
Yep.
And then Brian Flores showed up, and he didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
So
now Bo Nix kind of came out of the ashes this week and actually played a decent game down there in Tampa.
Yeah.
But the consistency, can Bo Nix be a consistent player week to week to week? I don't think he's ready for that. So the quarterback play has really contributed a lot to this. And if you have a quarterback that you have trust in, you're going to have a little bit longer of a leash and make some more aggressive decisions.
Yeah, but to Zander's point, all that, but the quarterback play starts with the poor offense. But to Zander's original point is, are things going to shift with the 4th down? That horse is out of the barn, man. They figured that out. That ain't changed.
When you watch the games on Monday night, Buck and Aikman have a graphic that goes up on the screen of what the analytics are telling you to do. And how many times are you like,
it's everywhere,
They have a graphic. It comes up. It says
there's 20. There's 20 websites you could punch in the numbers. That's what. And people thought Jeffrey Lurie would get upset by that because he was downplaying. A bunch of people told me that he's downplaying the analytics department. No, he's just pointing out that anybody can punch in the numbers. It's not about punching in the numbers. But
didn't Rich Kotite have a chart, but it was smeared one day? The rain had smeared the chart.
That was back in the old days when it was old school football. And a lot of people,
that was whether to go for 2 or not.
When it was our buddy Seth Joyner style football. Look, if you want to play that way, you're hamstringing yourself, and that's the thing. To me, it's about It's not guaranteeing success. Nothing can guarantee. If you could guarantee success, it'd be really easy to do. Nobody can do that. You're increasing your margin for error. That's all you're doing. You're trying to get a slight advantage. And the fact that everybody has followed the Eagles' lead should be a sense of pride for this fan base. For some reason, it isn't.
I asked this question last week. I wanted to try to get in the heads, and I don't know if I really want to do this because it might scare me a little bit, but bring me in the heads of the person who always defaults to blame the coach over the players. Like, I will never understand why people want to blame coaches more than the guy making $13 million. It's one of the most bizarre things to me. Like the whole Barkley play. Everybody's blaming Sirianni. How could you go on that ball? How could you not kick it? How could you throw the pass? How come you don't run it? The guy was wide open and he dropped it. Yet we want to default to blaming the play, not the result of the play. I will never.
I'm with you.
Sound like John McMullen there, Mike Gill.
I mean, it's astonishing.
I can't understand it. It's everything. You know, it's this town is an unbelievable study. And if somebody could do the study and somehow find it for me, it was Brett Brown's fault. It was Doc Rivers' fault. It was Gabe Kapler's fault. It's Joe Girardi's fault. It can't always be their fault. Somewhere in there, the players have to produce. I've never seen it. So every coach on planet Earth sucks in every sport, apparently. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And not only that, Saquon, because of the type of guy he is, was the first guy who said, that's on me. First guy.
Yeah.
Took complete accountability right after the game. Didn't hide, didn't do anything. Yeah, that was so obviously on the player. And yet, now there's a lot of people, I'm not saying everyone, there's a lot of people who understand it's on the player, but there's an astonishing amount of people that want to blame somebody else.
Yeah.
It is bizarre to me. It is crazy. But it really is, you know, you want to protect certain players. It's easy to blame the coach. That's the nature of the industry, right? That's why Brian Johnson scapegoated. That's why Alex Tanny scapegoated. That's why back in the day, Mike Rowe was scapegoated. If you don't reach expectations, you can't fire the players. So you fire the coaches. And that's part of it. Everybody understands that. But that doesn't mean in the moment when something is so obvious that.
Well, and listen, it's crazy. You know, people ask all these, you know, like Joe Girardi won a World Series, by the way. So people, it's like, this guy has won a World Series, and yet we think he sucks. Gabe Kapler won 107 games. He was the manager of the year with a team that was not all that good. And yet our default is this guy sucks. He can't coach. You know, Nick Sirianni took a team to the Super Bowl, and now our default is, well, he had no role in that. It is that's unbelievable to me how we can put these things together of you can't have success because of this particular guy. I mean, it is what it is with the coaching thing. I think, and I maintain.
Well, and then you mentioned Dallas.
We always say fans are smart. We always say fans are smart, right? They're smart enough to know they cannot play the game, but they are dumb enough to think they could coach it better than the guy who's doing it.
Well, you talk about people who do not like playing in Philadelphia. Some players don't. And you get the Kelsey stuff is like, well, if you do well, you know, everybody's going to love you. You know, it's easy to do when you're Jason Kelsey and you're a legend. But you got this week after a win, Mike, granted, an ugly win, but a win against a team that was coming into the game portrayed as this juggernaut on the road in a tough place to play, the Superdome. And you mentioned Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert's out there, whatever he was on. One of them was on the Dan Patrick show. One of them was on the McAfee show.
Yeah.
Brandon Graham was doing the same thing. And they're getting questions about Nick Sirianni after a win.
Yeah.
After a win. And by the way, they're all defending him, of course. You know.
Well, I don't. I don't anticipate the player going on there and questioning the call. But I did hear Goddard on the McAfee show because we played the audio on our show yesterday, John. Not for you. We played different audio for you.
You got me Chris Candy. That was good.
I got you, Chris Candy.
Because Chris Candy was, he's like Nick Sirianni's got to go, basically.
Well, he hates, he does not like the coach. I asked Colin Thompson this yesterday about the play calls and fourth down and all that stuff. I said, if you're in that huddle and you hear that play, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work over and over, okay, does that start to have splits in the locker room? Do people, he says, for a weak-minded player, maybe. Like if you're a strong-minded guy that just moves on and puts it in the past, you want that play call to be go for it every single time. You're, as an offense, don't want to hear we're kicking a field goal because in your mind, you kind of failed.
Yeah.
You kind of failed. So you got to understand the mentality of these guys playing at the highest level. They don't want to be coddled by the coach. They don't want the coach to kind of take the foot off the gas. They want to keep going. And it's hard for us to think like that. But part of the coach's job in our mind, and it's true, it's not to diminish them, is to save you from yourself sometimes and say, listen, we got good enough. Let's just take the 3. And I think they need to find a balance of when taking that 3 is the prudent decision for that moment and in that game.
That's where I am, Mike. I think there's got to be some nuance, and you can apply this to any philosophy in life, whether it's being aggressive in a football game or anything in your own personal life. There has to be some nuance.
There's no absolute.
But 21 and 15
that's
points in the last 2 games. If you're talking about a 35 to 31 shootout, yeah, obviously you need touchdowns to win that football game. We had 12 points or 15 points on the board last game. That's where I think people are calling for nuance more than they're criticizing the overall philosophy.
No, they're not. That's my point.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
No,
John.
well, you said people, but maybe you are, but people in general, because the week before it's like, well, you go for 4th and 4 here, you don't go for 4th and 4 there. It's not absolutes. There is nuance. Now, is the nuance correct in the moment? I don't think it was at the end of the half. Anybody who agrees with every decision is wrong, whether it's in politics, their personal life. Everybody who thinks they're right 100% of the time or their side is right 100% of the time, put them off to the side. They're morons. There is no absolutes. But if they went for it every time, I would agree with it. They don't.
Right. The world that we're living in right now, somehow, if you open up the X, formerly Twitter platform, and get defaulted to the For You, holy world, there's a life going on out there. There's a world that I don't want to be a part of.
Mike,
but
I can't do the For You. The For You
I need to somehow put a lock on. Can they pay me to have the For You defaulted?
Because politics is the best example. I don't want to say politics.
You go on there. One side is this side lies every single time they talk. The other side, this side lies every
exactly.
Time. You're
a moron. You're literally, if you're in your little political echo chamber, you're a moron. If you think your side has never made a mistake, just think about everyday life. Has there ever been a human being that existed that doesn't make mistakes? You're a moron. I'm not even going to address those types of people because they're not serious people. Same thing, much less important, but same thing in football.
But I think what's got lost in all of this is they won on the road in a very tough place to play, and they did not have A.J. Brown to start that game. So you already went into that game. Almost everybody watching, chatting, that will listen to this after we're done being live, you all went in and said, I don't know how we're winning this game. No A.J. Brown and the way their offense is going. Then Lane Johnson goes out. What is the Eagles' record when Lane Johnson doesn't play? Not good. Becton's already out. Covey goes out. Then you're losing that game, and you have to find a way to score a touchdown with Devontae Smith now off the field. So Brown
at Smith, 3rd and 16.
Covey, Lane Johnson, they're all off the field. And they find a way to win that game. They lose that game in that little 7-game stretch last year. So if we're asking ourselves, had they kind of got past that 7-game stretch, if it seemed like it entered for one day against with a drop pass wide open against the Falcons, maybe that game on Sunday says, okay, maybe this team does have some fight. Maybe they do like playing for this coaching staff. Maybe they like what's going on here. Yeah, they made some decisions that we don't like, but in the end, they won on a very difficult place to play under some really tough circumstances. That should have been the bigger story. Unfortunately, it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting discussion. It's one that mystifies me, it really does, because it's been so successful for this organization. And again, it should be a sense of pride. It should be a sense of pride for the fan base.
And I think fans get so wrapped up in the aesthetics of the victory. Like 15-12, not good enough. Should have been 35-10. Like, if you won 3-0 on the road in New Orleans under those circumstances, you're throwing a party that you got out of there somehow with a win, because that game is now in the box. You put it up on the shelf, and you're past it. It's over with. If we don't know that by now, everybody watches this and says it's a week-to-week league. Do you even know what that means then? Why do you get so angry seeing what happens in 1 week? And I'm not telling you to be reactional as a fan. You can have reactions and be upset and say, but you know, one team wins 35-7 1 week, and then they lose the next week. And you're like, how the hell did that happen? It happens every week. What do you mean, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah. Well, look at Tampa Bay last week. I mean, that
Denver was the worst team outside of Carolina we've seen all season. They're horrible. And they
I guarantee that killed
road.
a lot of those.
Oh, those things are done. Those
a lot of those knockout pools. Yeah. Tampa Bay not beating Denver at home. And by the way, they got waxed. It's not like they lost a close game.
They were Tampa wasn't competitive. At home last week, they scored 7 points.
Yeah, against Todd Bowles, against a rookie quarterback who looked like garbage. Yeah, it's a tough league to get a beat on.
And that was after, by the way, Tampa beat Detroit.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, Eagles fans, we're going to talk about this later in the week, but I don't like this spot for the Eagles because they played so poorly last week.
We talked about that, John. Been thinking about that all week since you said that on the postgame show.
Yeah, I don't like the spot.
I also don't like the spot because you might not have A.J. Brown and Devontae.
Well, that more so. More
that might be more important.
More so. Yeah. So we'll talk about, get to that, A.J. Devontae. Now, in theory, both could play. In theory, both couldn't play. So we'll get a better indication as we get
What about Lane?
Lane is in the protocol. So, I mean, history says he's probably not going to play. He has as I mentioned, it's become more difficult to get through the protocol in 1 week. So that's not a good sign for either Devontae or Lane, but it seems more if you're trying to gauge these things, and all concussions are different, so it's impossible to gauge. But if you're just using the numbers of other players, Lane has more of a history with concussions, and it's more difficult to pass the protocol when you have a history. So if I were a betting man, and you can get those odds on BetUS, I would say probably not Lane Johnson. I would say Devontae has a better chance, but that's pure speculation. Concussion protocol is, you're dealing with independent neurologists.
Yeah.
It's not up to the team. It's not up to anybody else. And by the way,
puking after a concussion doesn't seem like he, that.
No, and by the way, the science, the honest doctors will tell you the science remains in its infancy. There's a lot of unknowns.
He's got his arm around Dom. I mean, he looked like he had a rough night.
Yeah. Hopefully he's all right, because that's nasty to take a hit to the head and be feeling like that. Mike, real quick, man, we went through almost a full interview here, but I do want to get your impression. Massive turnaround for that defense, Mike Gill. How encouraged or still a lot of concerns remaining on that defense? They look like a different team out there in week 3 than week 2. How encouraged are you by their performance in week 3 from perspective of being a defense that can help this team get to a Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that all of a sudden they've turned the corner and they're going to turn into this great defense because they still didn't get a lot of edge rush. This was one, and the defense was predicated on the fact that Jalen Carter just dominated the day.
Yeah.
And you can see what happens when you have a player of that magnitude doing what you think he could do. Now, how much of that is Eric McCoy goes out early in the game and he's just wrecking the middle of that and getting pushed from the middle. So you didn't have to get as much edge rush because he was getting so much push in the pocket, which is making Carr get the ball. I mean, he's just chucking everything underneath because he didn't have any.
Like every time Carr had Carter in his face.
Exactly. Yeah. So he had the pocket in his face the whole game. So it's hard to say, they're starting to kind of click and get it. And maybe they are getting more comfortable. They sure are. Third week, you're feeling better, but they still have to find a way to get out. You can't just ride Jalen Carter pushing the pocket back week in and week out. You're hoping that it's a factor week in and week out, but not as big of a factor as it was this past week. He absolutely wrecked the whole game. Obviously, the Bryce Huff stuff, if he has no factor in this season, that's going to be a problem. How much gas in the tank can you keep riding Brandon Graham for? Josh Sweat right now at this stage seemingly has taken a step back from where he was 2 years ago when he was a double-digit sack guy. I don't feel like he's anywhere close to that player right now. So where are you generating pass rush? That will be the key to consistency on defense. But for 1 week, they look pretty good. Why? Because they did what they had to do. They got pressure without having to blitz.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. When Jalen Carter plays like that, to me, if I'm basing the Eagles defense, Jalen Carter's not seeing, I'm sliding everything to Jalen Carter. He's getting constant double teams and somebody else has got to beat me. And ironically, I mean, Brandon Graham's playing great. I get why everybody says 36 going to keep it up. I get all that, but until he doesn't keep it up, I got to assume he's going to continue to play great. And I think Josh Sweat has been fine. I think, the numbers aren't there, but they'll come. The issue becomes with Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff, the younger players. They got to step up at some point. Is that going to happen? It's not looking good right now.
Yeah, don't feel great about it.
Yeah. At Mike Gill Show, make sure you follow Mike on X, x.com platform, and don't click on the For You, as he mentioned. It's just going to ruin your day.
Yeah,
97.3 ESPN, the Sports Bash, 2 to 6 every day, drive time. So you can hear more Mike Gill. Where should we end it, Mike? What about the quarterback turnovers? That's got to stop too. And I wouldn't blame the interception, as Kellen
the fumble
Moore
was the one where
the fumble
was the one where you're like, that's clear. Now, obviously, we're watching it, and you can see the guy tailing him from the backside and getting ready to swipe.
Yeah, but he's got to be aware. He's got
the ball hanging out here. You did see him later in the game, kind of two-hand it a little bit more, but you can't. 7 straight weeks with an interception. The fumble's one thing. You get 7 picks. They're coming in the red zone. People are complaining about they left all these points on the board. Well, there was 6 right there that wasn't converted. That you got to find a way to start converting those things. And look, if we believe that they can get cleaned up, then that's another reason why these play decisions won't be as a big of a factor. And hopefully as they keep kind of going for it, it'll start evening out and some of that aggression will start to benefit you as opposed to us bitching about it the next day, 4 days later.
Yeah, fair points. But,
I will say my get out of here will be, there's a hurricane happening this week in Tampa.
Yeah, that's true.
And
too.
My Tampa people tell me there are contingency plans on potentially moving the game, all that kind of stuff. So, we're going to get Tom Brady on the call this week.
Tom Brady on the call. Yeah, maybe they usually move him to Detroit. Are the Lions home? Ford Field seems to be the place to go. I don't know if the Lions are playing at home, but we'll have to check that out. I don't know what the contingencies are. Hopefully the weather breaks right. Tampa's a a fun place to go for people. I'm sure Eagles fans
Detroit
are traveling.
plays Monday night.
Yeah,
and they are at home. That's in Detroit.
And they're at home Monday night.
Yeah. But they'll go back to back. Ford Field seems needy. They're your needy friends. They'll say, yeah, we'll host the game.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to come to fruition, but Eagles fans travel well, so obviously they want to go to Tampa generally. And you have Clearwater, the whole Phillies connection, so always a big trip for Eagles fans. Hopefully the weather works out.
No doubt. We'll see. Get these injury reports, see what it looks like, because 2 receivers being down, that's the one spot. When we were in training camp and you're trying to find things to talk about,
John,
who's going to replace those 2 guys? If one of them gets hurt, now both of them are hurt.
Yep.
Jahan Dotson, you're up. Wide receiver 1, Jahan Dotson. How about that?
We'll see what he can do. Mike, thanks for joining the show today, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
See you guys.
There's Mike. Follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Great stuff from Mike Gill. Nice nuanced discussion of the coaching there with Mike Gill. So good stuff from Mike Gill. Make sure you follow him and listen to his show on 97.3 ESPN. He does a great job on 97.3 ESPN. We're going to take our commercial break. I gotta talk to Johnny Mack after the break about our man Zack Baun. Maybe the biggest surprise on defense of the season so far early in the year. We're going to talk about Zack Baun next, coming up on Birds 365. I want to thank everybody in the chat today. Been a great crowd as always. Make sure you guys hit that like button, as it's one of the best things you can do to help support our channel and also this show here, Birds 365. So thank you. And then a big shout out to all of our podcast listeners as well that don't follow on YouTube, but that listen on the podcast. We get over 1,000 daily now on the podcast. So thank you all for listening to the podcast. Appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to leave a review on there. Let's get to our commercial break. Before I do that, I want to tell you guys about BetUS, our newest sponsor here on Birds 365. Please go to betus.com.pa and use the promo code YouTube150. That means 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, and then 125% sign-up bonus on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more for your Saquon Barkley prop bets. We gave away the jersey yesterday. The jersey has been claimed, everybody. So make sure you get on BetUS and take those prop bets. I think it's going to be another big week for Saquon Barkley coming into it this week. Obviously, if AJ's out, if Devontae's out, Saquon's going to have another big day, presumably here. So get on BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa and use the promo code YouTube150. That's Birds 365. We'll be right back, everybody, in 3 minutes. Stay tuned.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. That's Johnny Mac, John McMullen, the number one Eagles beat reporter. Make sure you guys give John a follow on Twitter at JF McMullen to follow more of his work. And I'm your host, Zander Krause. Make sure you give me a follow on Twitter at Real Zander. Johnny Mac, I want to talk about Zack Baun, baby. What a surprise he's been early in the year. Not, you talked about him all through camp. He looked pretty good through training camp, but he's really played at a high level here in the first few weeks of the season now. Eagles are 2-1. Just your key takeaways on Zack Baun right now as he continues to progress and develop in this role. It seems to be the first time in his career, John, that he's played this type of role on a consistent basis. Your takeaways from him and what you've seen from him so far.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he didn't play that much in New Orleans. Few opportunities here and there. Now the Saints, have good linebackers, so it's a little bit, then we talk about the Eagles' philosophy. Demario Davis has been there for years now. Pete Werner's a very good linebacker as well. So they paid more attention to that particular position. So it's a little bit more difficult to get on the field. Here we know the Eagles' history, and it looks good early. And I find it ironic because this is a situation where when Howie first signed this player, he was talking about him more as an edge rusher. And then Vic got a look at him and said, I think he can play off-ball linebacker. And, 2 good games, 1 bad game. And I asked Vic about Zack yesterday, having a good first game, a little bit of a dip, comes back, another good game. How important is it to adjust, and how do you get consistency out of a player who's still learning the position, is how I framed it. And Big said, I think in his case, he will get that consistency. And he said he's a quick learner. He doesn't actually make the same mistake twice very often. He's got a good football instinct and IQ, which is very important as a linebacker. And he said, which is critical for any defensive position, but especially inside linebacker. And then he mentioned his versatility as well. If you go back to the opener and his ability to get 2 sacks. So maybe, he becomes a bigger part of that edge rush. It's at some point. And we all have brought up the Andrew Van Ginkel aspect of the Miami defense last year, where you had this weird hybrid guy who could play off-ball linebacker, but can also rush the passer. And, ultimately, can he become that type of player? I don't know if he can become that type of player. If you're watching the rest of the league and you're watching Andrew Van Ginkel this season, it's pretty good. I don't know if he can become that level of player, but he's been solid. He's been really good, and he's been an upgrade for the Eagles and for where they've been at the linebacker position. And one of the best stories so far, I would say, early in the season is Zack Baun playing off-ball linebacker.
Yeah, he's been impressive, John. He's on a 1-year deal. You think this could be? I mean, if he continues like this, I think it's too early to go down that road yet. But you think Howie would try and kind of get in front of that and get him signed for next year early if he continues to play like this?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he'll try, he'll try to address it, I think, but also be wary. They're not gonna break the bank for linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, look, TJ Edwards had a great year here, and they didn't do it for him. I don't know. That's where I think people get PTSD. They don't want to let him if he's going to play this good. Shit, man, we got to keep him here in Philly. But
Yeah,
I
so
don't
it's
know if
got to
they're
be
going.
like, to use the Van Ginkle got, I think 10 million a year. They're not going that level.
Dang, is
Otherwise,
that
he'd
what
be
Van
here.
Ginkel got? He got that much.
Yeah, I'll look it up, but yeah, but they're not going that level. We all assumed, all right, Van Ginkel's a free agent. Yeah, it's going to be difficult for
Yeah,
Miami
Van
to
Ginkel
keep
got
him.
a 2-year, $20 million deal with $14 million guaranteed. So
Yeah,
basically,
they're
10 mil.
not going there. Not that they should for Zack Baun, but I'm just using him as the template because that's a player that Vic used very well. Um, and you know, he also hurt his foot, so that complicated. He probably would have gotten more, but he had a Lisfranc
Right.
injury, pretty
Yeah, that's
significant.
right.
So that limited him a little bit. So he was a player out of the Eagles' price range. We all said that makes too much sense for the Eagles not to be in, but he's out of their price range at that particular position. Um, so a lot depends on how well Zach plays. Does he want to bet on himself? Because other teams are willing to pay um, off-ball linebackers more than the Eagles. So maybe he wants to bet on himself. It's always a two-way street.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with Zack Baun. Been a pleasant surprise though, and I think that linebacking core. I'll give some credit to Nakobe Dean too. He's had his moments, but I think overall, John, the linebackers have performed better than we anticipated coming into the year. When we talked about, how much of a weakness that position was. I think they've been
Well,
a
I
somewhat
don't
of a
think
pleasant
that,
surprise.
and I mean certainly Zach. I don't think Nakobe played very well the first 2 weeks. Now I think he played better against New Orleans. And I've been very
Well, I
high
think there
on
was a lot of
Nakobe.
people out there, me included, that were questioning whether he could be an NFL linebacker in general. And I think he showed that he can. Does he have things to improve? 100%. But I think he showed something that, a lot of fans were looking for through those first 2 seasons that you just never got.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. And I'm the one who told everybody that he was going to start, and
Right. You
he was
did.
out playing Devin White, and he was, and he did, but he's not played well. Just because I said it, he's not played well early in the season. Played a little bit better, still struggling in coverage, which I think is overrated because all linebackers struggle in coverage, but he struggles more than most linebackers, so it's worse. Um, and he's getting better. I think he's going to be fine, but I'm not ready to say they've solved that issue yet because I haven't seen the same thing, the consistency part of it. But the ups of Zack Baun have been much higher than the ups of Nakobe Dean, which I did not see coming. So I think Zach has been more impressive of the two, which again I did not see coming. I thought Nakobe was ready for a big year, and maybe he will be, and maybe it'll. So he got a lot better in New Orleans, but the first 2 games were kind of ugly, and I'm that's not good for me. For people that think I said Nakobe was going to play well, he didn't play well first 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie to people.
Yeah, I think he's been better. Like I said, better than I anticipated. So maybe that's why I'm talking him up a little bit. But overall, I think the linebackers have been a pleasant surprise on the defensive side of the football. We're only 3 weeks in. So, week 2 was a crapshoot. The defense played not so great. Week 3, I thought they bounced back strong and had a really good day on defense. So we'll see how they do here in week 4. Getting ready for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Eagles.
By
Going
the
down to
way,
Tampa Bay.
real
Maybe.
quick, just to
Yeah,
keep
go ahead.
people updated, the Eagles have shifted their schedule today. Nick Sirianni's getting pushed back to 2:05. Practice is now going to be at 2:30. and Jalen Hurts is going to speak at about 4:15. Locker room's going to open at 4. So locker room was going to open before practice. Now it's going to open after practice. So they shifted the schedule around. Who knows? We'll figure it out when we get to talk to Nick why they did it, but they shifted the schedule around today.
Interesting. That's late. I mean, I guess it's normally that late on during the week, but that's late. Locker room opens at 4. So good stuff. Johnny Mack will probably be heading. You'll be heading down there today, right, John?
Yes.
So John will be down there today.
Down there.
We'll get his
Way too late.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're not going to get home till what, 7 o'clock tonight?
Probably somewhere around there.
Good stuff. We'll get the update from John tomorrow on Birds 365. Appreciate all of you guys in the chat. We're going to get to our next commercial break. We have Brandon Lee Goutman from Bleeding Green Nation coming up next on Birds 365. Appreciate everybody. Hit that like button. To all of our great members, I do want to update you on the jersey giveaway. The jersey was claimed. The jersey has been ordered, and the jersey will be delivering shortly, soon, to David Mack Perez, who became a member a couple months ago. So shout out to David Mack Perez. Congrats on winning your jersey yesterday. I think we got a lot more to give away. So stay patient, all the JAKIB members. I think we're going to be giving away a lot more of them, especially with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, banged up a little bit. It's going to be a big Saquon week again, I think, in week 4. So we gave away the jersey yesterday. It was a ton of fun, by the way, on Birds 365 after hours. So appreciate all of our members for sticking around with me and hanging out. I had a lot of fun with you guys. So good stuff on the jersey. I just wanted to give everybody an update on that. We're going to get to our commercial break. Brandon Lee Goutman coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom McMullen safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Brandon Lee Goutman of Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you on this Wednesday.
How's it going, guys?
Good to see you, BLG. So many things to talk about this game, but I want to start with, because I'm sick of the fourth down stuff, but I do want to get your thought process on that. But I want to start with Vic, because I was really impressed after looking at the film and going back in his history. A lot of people, his Super Bowl 53, I had mentioned, and I wrote about this at SI. Bill Belichick completely shut down Sean McVay. He was actually playing copycat that day, because a couple weeks earlier, the Rams had been tearing up the league, and they got to Chicago, and Vic came out with this 6-man front to deal with their outside zone stretch runs, and they scored. I think Chicago won 15-6. They completely shut down this explosive offense. And he brought it back, man. He brought it back against this powerful Saints offense. And I think we got to see the first sign of this defense is in good hands, and a lot better hands than it was. Maybe because he didn't teach Sean Desai that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or any of his associates or disciples for that matter. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was it's just an incredibly impressive performance by that defense to shut down an offense that was just, I mean, basically unstoppable the first 2 weeks. And regardless of who the Saints played, I mean, I don't care. Like, when you're putting up like over 400 yards and 40 something points, like, that's just pretty incredible. Yeah. And also considering that the Eagles defense was put in some bad spots there, because they had the block punt that started a Saints drive at the Eagles 27. Saints don't score on that from the turnover on downs. And then the touchdown late in the game, their only touchdown, I guess, was the right off that missed field goal where the Saints took over at the 50-yard line. So to hold the Saints to just 12 points total there, it was shocking me, considering coming into the game after what we saw against the Falcons, Eagles couldn't either stop the run or rush the passer. So to be able to transition from that to just shutting down this hottest offense in the NFL, I mean, Vic Fangio is a huge reason why.
Yeah. And I want to give Vic credit, but I still say now, number one before, and I brought that up, number one is Jalen Carter. I mean, they couldn't block Jalen Carter.
Players play better and the defense looks better. Yep.
Yeah. It's always players first. How do you tap into that, BLG? I mean, it was a bad week for Jalen Carter. Let's be honest. He didn't play well. And when you got Nick Sirianni saying he didn't play well and Vic saying he didn't play well, and then he's getting benched for the first series because he's late to a team meeting, wasn't a good week for him. And then he shows up in New Orleans, and he's the monster we all expected, or we all hope at least, that he can turn into. How do you tap into that consistency? Is it just up to the player?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Carter himself also said he wasn't playing well. More specifically, said he was playing as trash. Yeah. So, maybe that was a little bit of a turning point for him, and he realized that he really needed to get his butt in gear and turn this thing around after a slow start. I mean, it's not like he's lacked ability. Clearly, we saw it last year. Thought he looked good again in training camp this year. He has the talent there. It's just about, making it all click and being the consistent kind of player that he needs to be for this team. Because, you can see when he's firing on all cylinders, I was saying, like, it kind of reminds me of Fletcher Cox when he was in his prime, maybe even better, but at least when Fletcher Cox was at his peak, he could just take over a game and there's really nothing the other team could do about it. And he would just totally kind of shut down an entire offense. And we clearly saw Jalen Carter just do the same thing. And the box score wasn't even bad by any means, but he played so much better than the stat sheet could even indicate. I mean, you just saw him pop on the film time and time again. He's a special player. And look, I mean, I think, like, if he plays like this team's ceiling is very high.
Yeah, no doubt. BLG, I think the biggest question now for the defense is going to be the consistency thing, right? It's got to be week in and week out. I mean, you go from, really a bad defense in that second week to a tremendous defense in week 3. So we're definitely counting on consistency there. Are you optimistic that they can be more consistent? I mean, you're talking about a young group, obviously, with a lot of young leaders on that group. I did think it was going to take some time, but I think you saw a flash of what they can be if they continue to develop? How optimistic are you that they'll be able to kind of put it together and be that on a more week in, week out basis?
Yeah, I think some of it too is just channeling energy of like, hey, we can't be pushed around here. We can't be this defense that can't either stop the run or rush the passer. We have to kind of play with some more pride. And I think that was also another factor in this game, in addition to the players playing better. And Vic Fangio cooking up a good game plan is the players as a whole kind of just playing with more toughness and physicality and effort all around. So certainly you hope to see that continue. We still need to see how this team, I would say, defends the run at 11 personnel, which is clearly a big issue.
Yeah.
And, so there's going to be adjustments to what the Eagles just did. And I think the Saints were probably a good matchup for the Eagles for what they wanted to do.
Isn't that strange? I don't want to take credit for it because I didn't think about it before the game, but after the game, BLG, I was like, you know what? Styles make bites, and they're out there 12 personnel, trying to play action all the time. And you can play these 6-man fronts and you don't have to worry about spreading the field, which has been the real issue when it comes to stopping the run. I'm with you 100%. You can't, it's not like they can roll out 6-man fronts any other week because most of the time you're going to see 11 personnel. That's the default setting of this league. So they still have to prove they can stop the run in those types of situations. Weird because of how good the Saints offense is.
I think taking Bryce Huff off the field certainly seems to help a little bit. That was also another big adjustment.
Taking strays, but yeah, he's not played well. I mean, I'm the first to admit I thought it was a good signing. I'm not running from it. Right now, it looks like I was wrong. What is going on? I mean, he played well, granted, in limited snaps with the New York Jets. It's the NFL. Why is he nothing? What is going on here with Bryce Huff?
It's really kind of hard to understand, other than like maybe the Eagles just signed a really part-time player that couldn't handle a bigger role. But the thing about that is, like, okay, Bryce Huff is still kind of playing, at least in the Saints scheme, on some of these, obvious passing downs and getting one-on-ones at times. And he just looked like he couldn't do anything in those situations. And so even if it's just like, oh, okay, he's a one-trick pony, a role player. I mean, that's not like ideal in a perfect world.
That. Yeah,
but if
the one trick,
case, right. If he can do that, sure, you have something there, but that's not the case. They have nothing. He's giving them nothing. Second game in a row, didn't even show up in the box score, has one assisted tackle the whole season. Like that's nothing.
Yeah. Now, long term, because we know Vic well enough now, BLG, he's going to do what he wants to do. But this is Howie gave this guy $51 million. You don't want to be embarrassed. At some point, ego comes into it. Are they going to force him to play Bryce Huff at some point?
I mean, I think the forcing is where we are now in terms of Vic Fangio might not want to play him at all for all we know. And maybe he wants to get Alex Hunt more involved. But
yeah, I mean, are we really approaching a point where we're going to question if he should be on the 53? I mean, it seems like we're not far from that.
He's going to be on the 53.
Yeah,
I know that. I know he's going to be. But I mean, the question is no longer like even how productive can he be or can he live up to what we signed him for? It's now moved down to like, should he be on the field at all?
I think it's just going to be what we saw in like that fourth edge rusher kind of role. And again, obvious passing situations, hoping that they can get him going there at some point. And there's some kind of signs of life. And if there aren't over, 5 more games, whatever, 8 more games, then maybe things get changed at that point. But obviously they're going to give him enough of a leash here to show some kind of flash at all.
Yeah, it's ugly. It's getting ugly. It's still early, but it's getting ugly. He's got to show something. And confidence is a big thing with players. It seems like he's lost his confidence. Maybe they can figure something out. Maybe Vic can scheme something up to get him a sack, and who knows? Maybe he can turn the corner at least a little bit and become a contributor. Shipped it to the offense. All right, we'll get over it. One of the things I think we got to elevate, I've been saying this all week, and I'm going to throw it at you, BLG. I think we got to elevate this fourth down conversation from this standpoint. The overall aggressiveness of the Philadelphia Eagles has been a big net gain for this organization, to the point where the entire league has shifted to their philosophy. I think it should be a source of pride for the fan base, literally. I mean, they changed the way the NFL thinks, and every minutia of a failed fourth down is that's the dumbest decision ever. I mean, that's just about play results.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I think the 4th and 1 at the end of the half, that was dumb. That was dumb because of the timing, though.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much upside. Either you trick them and you score a touchdown, or you're kicking a field goal anyway. I just didn't see the upside of that. So I'm not saying it's always great, but overall, and that's what you're looking for when you're talking about analytics, it has given this team a huge advantage over the years. And by the way, BLG, if they weren't this aggressive, they wouldn't have their Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's like the ultimate hard to reconcile thing to me when I hear people tell you have to take the points. That's not how the Eagles won a Super Bowl. Doug Peterson did not just take the points en route to a championship. And then the other part of it is, like Philadelphia has this reputation for, blue collar, tough, and like football, macho, like kind of this really like, tough guy kind of thing. And it's like, you're scared of a fourth down. You're not like, hey, let's go all out. Let's believe in ourselves, confidence, toughness. And you want to punt the ball. You want to rely on like a guy who's like one of the smallest players on the roster, either like the punter or the kicker. Like you want to rely on that guy instead of your big offensive line blowing the defensive line off the ball and maybe getting the first down. Like it doesn't make sense from that point to me either.
Yeah. I mean, you can talk about Philly special all you want. You can talk about Brandon strip sack, all obviously big plays, tremendous plays. They don't go for it on 4th and 1.
Yeah.
With Zach Ertz, Nick Foles. Patriots are getting the ball back. You know how that game was going, BLG. They were going to score.
They didn't punt.
Yeah.
The whole game.
No. So it's mystifying to me why so many people have a problem with it. It is really mystifying. And like I said, it should be a source of pride. They changed the way the NFL thinks. Everybody goes for it. Now it's become, and I mentioned Antonio Pearson week 1 had a chance to win a game. He was down 6 points plus side of the field. Yeah. Plus side of the field, punted the football, old school football, never got the ball back, lost. Maybe he doesn't get it, but at least he's got an opportunity to go out and seize it and win a game. He played old school football. It's just, and I'm the old guy, right? I'm supposed to be why am I the forward thinking guy in this town? I don't get it.
Dennis Allen helped keep the Eagles in that game in part on Sunday, by the way, too, by also being conservative. Like he punted that one drive from the Eagles 40. I think he had another from like the Eagles 42 or 45 or something. Like an underrated reason, not to take credit away from the Eagles, but also for Dennis Allen being conservative, that also helped them in that game.
Yeah, and then he went away from it at the end and decided to go for the 4th on late. And I'm like, you should have at that point, you should have just stuck with your conservative guns and taken the 3 because it might have changed the outcome of the game a little bit. But he went away from what he wanted to do. BLG, I want to start to talk about this game on Sunday, man. I think this is where you're talking about now real adversity for this team. I mean, we don't know the update yet on the injuries, but potentially no Devontae, potentially no AJ again, potentially no Lane Johnson, your all-pro right tackle. How you viewing this game coming into it? Week 4, Bucs kind of regressed a little bit last week, but just your early thoughts on this game in Tampa for week 4 for the Eagles.
Yeah, to your point, it's hard to project what the Eagles are looking like here with all these injuries that they have going on. I will say that I don't think the Bucs are a super scary team now. I say that with the Eagles having struggled with them, obviously the last time they played, but I think, the Bucs are riding a little bit off of the reputation of that win against the Lions in Detroit, which on its face, beating the Lions in Detroit, a good thing. But that game, the Lions outplayed that team. I mean, Lions, I think, visited the red zone 10 times and scored like one time. They kind of just got a little bit unlucky there. It's kind of like reminds me of just this Eagles Saints game where, the score 3 points at the end of the day and Eagles won, but they outgained them by over 200 and whatever yards. So I think the Bucs got outplayed in that one, and they have some injury issues of their own going on, especially up front. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to make of the Eagles receiving core this week. Is it going to be Jahan Dotson and Paris Campbell and
Johnny
Wilson and maybe John Ross? Like, I mean, that's concerning.
Yeah, it is. And again, we'll get a better indication. Eagles practicing today, shifted their schedule around a little bit. We'll get the first status report after practice today. But, AJ told Lisa Salters 2 weeks. Now, what does that mean to you, BLG? And in theory, you see the bye week, the early bye week after this game. I would say, well, they'll play it cautious, get through the bye week, and then you give AJ all the time he potentially needs. But I was thinking that with Devontae Smith. And if he can't get through concussion protocol, boy, then, as you mentioned, it's ugly. And then it becomes, all right, those Saquon touch stories are going to uptick more because that poor guy's going to have, DeMarco Murray level touches after 4 games.
I think he's on pace for like 400 carries, not even all touches, carries right now. So,
yeah, I don't know how sustainable that is. Obviously, Dallas Goedert, they finally got Dallas Goedert involved. That was a big positive. But man, they need something at receiver. Does that limit your opportunity to be cautious with AJ Brown this week? If it's, you can't be cautious, is my theory.
Yeah, I think they, in a perfect world, obviously they want to ride it out until after the bye and just make sure that it doesn't pop back up. We know these hamstring injuries could be a nagging thing if you don't kind of wait it out properly. So yeah, but it's not an ideal world. And maybe it's a situation where they, have AJ on a pitch count and maybe just trying to hope that he can serve as something of a decoy. So the defense kind of has to account for him more than not at all. I guess that's kind of maybe the most I could see him playing just based on how he hasn't been out here and we don't know really anything. Maybe, and because of the situation being so dire, maybe that's how they would try to compromise there. But I mean, that I think that should make anyone nervous again, that he would be returning before he might be 100%. So yeah, just not great. Not a great situation.
No. And it is a difficult decision from that standpoint. If it is that bad, I wouldn't use him as a decoy. Then I'm taking my medicine. I'm trying to persevere as much as possible. But I'll bring that up. Look, this team, the word I used was clunky. They can't be this clunky every time AJ Brown's not on the field. They got to do a little. You can't replace a guy like that. That's baked into it. But, the Kansas City Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill, and everybody's like, oh, they win Super Bowls. They're not the same. They're not nearly as explosive as they once were. Even I go back to Jefferson got hurt last year, had a hamstring, ironically, missed 4 or 5 weeks. And all of a sudden they had Jordan Addison and then they do something. They got to be a little bit better. Even with Devontae out there, they're clunky. Why is it? But it's amazing to me a wide receiver could have that impact on the offense. Amazing to me.
I think part of it's the quarterback. And not to fault him, but he loves throwing to AJ Brown and hard not to when he's such a good player. I think we've seen even when the offense as a whole might be out of sync or everything isn't clicking, at least that easy button is. Like even when, as recently the Eagles practice against the Patriots this summer, that one day where like a lot of things weren't going right for the Eagles offense. So I think it was just like, well, I'm just going to throw to AJ Brown over and over and over because that works. And to not have that here and for multiple games now, yeah, you would hope that they're adjusting a little bit better. And I give them credit for actually remembering that Dallas Goedert is on the team. Somehow only had 4 targets week 2, fewer than Britton Covey. So I think that's important. So that's, I guess, an encouraging sign. I'll take that they remember he's on the team. But yeah, I don't know what this looks like if he doesn't have either Devontae or AJ to trust in this situation. It might just have to be, even though it's not ideal, give Saquon the ball like 30 something times.
It's going to be another Saquon.
Yeah. Jody used to always bring up to me, BLG, about load management. But, it's funny to me. We were talking about Rashad Penny last year. Are they load managing Rashad? I'm like, no. They did the whole year. Yeah, they did. But, they don't use load management in the NFL, but maybe they got to rethink it with Saquon. If it continues to go in this direction with that many touches, at some point you got to bite the bullet and say, all right, I'm going to give Kenny 15 touches just to lighten up the workload. Does that happen at some point?
I think maybe, if when Devontae and AJ are back, I think we'll see more of a balance there. I think the Eagles are aware of that in the bigger picture, but it's early in the season and you've had these injuries, and I think it's kind of just like you have to do it. They might not want to do it perfectly in a perfect world, but they just have to lean on Saquon right now. And I think that's okay. And he looks like he can handle it. Again, I think they know that they have the bigger picture in mind, and I think they'll scale back a little bit at some point. At the same time, I think they also want to make sure they get their money's worth out of this window here, and I think they know that. It's not.
That's interesting too. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think they're projecting Saquon to have this 8-year career here. So I think they are going to be a little bit more aggressive.
That's my point with Brandon Graham. Let empty the tank, man. Empty the tank. Might as well empty the Saquon.
That was a great call by you, John, because that's exactly what they've done.
Yeah.
Were you saying that in the offseason? And that's exactly what they're doing here with BG.
And if he keeps it up, BLG, I'm wondering if this might not be his retirement swan song. He's playing at a high. He's playing really good. I mean, even on the game tape, he's creating a lot of pressure. Looks really good out there.
Yeah, I mean, he probably it's probably a case of he doesn't have to retire, just like Fletcher Cox didn't really, or Jason Kelsey for that matter. They didn't have to retire because they couldn't play anymore. And I think that is kind of a cool thing to think about here. If we're appreciating Brandon Graham's last season, it shouldn't be taken for granted. A lot of players do not go out in a way where there's the same player or playing at a really high level. So the fact that BG is able to do this, I think is a nice little send off there, where he's going out on top as opposed to he's just, kind of fading out of the picture.
Nick Sirianni, BLG. Boy, I think he made a mistake by bringing up this play calling thing. I think he opened a Pandora's box that he does not want open, whether he realizes it or not, by saying he took. Now, my first reaction to that was AJ Jalen in Seattle, in that I thought he was just protecting Kellen Moore. In the moment, I said, all right, he's just protecting Kellen Moore. He always says everything is got my name on it, blah, 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 blame me type of thing. But now he's doubled down. He said, occasionally I'll jump in and call a play. Which is news to us. He said he hasn't called plays since week 9 of the 2021 season. And you know how this is going to go, BLG. It's every bubble screen. Oh, that's a Nick play. Every unsuccessful, that's Nick. That's Nick taking over. Why did he do that?
I don't know. I really don't know why he did that. I think he kind of just says a lot when he speaks, and maybe more than he always maybe wants to give away, even though he does try to focus on competitive advantage and whatnot. Yeah, it's a tough spot. Nick Sirianni's in a tough spot. And look, I'm not saying that's not related to him. Some of that is his fault. He put himself in this position, but also he's in a weird spot here where how the team brought him or retained him and shifted everything. He's in a situation where he's not really set up to get a lot of credit, other than needing to ace those game management decisions, which he hasn't thus far. So there's really, to this point, there isn't really a lot I think he can do to get credit other than because they're 2-1 right now, and no one wants to be like, and I agree, by the way, that they've kind of won in spite of some, again, really bad decisions here. So he's in a tough spot, but that's all the more reason he has to take advantage of those opportunities where he does, at least publicly, influence the game and actually get those right.
Yeah. In some ways, it's because one of my issues with the setup was, Nick should have this responsibility. Look, if he wants to call something in a particular, he's the head coach of he should be able to do that. I wasn't sure, I don't know about you, but I wasn't sure he had that power any longer. So I think the fact that he does is actually a positive from the setup perspective, but I don't know. I think he handled it wrong politically, if that makes sense. He opened up like every literal. Did Kellen call that play? Did Nick call that play? Every failure in a big spot is going to be that.
Yeah.
People talk about the fourth downs, and that's one of the biggest mistakes I think Nick Sirianni, the head coach, has ever made. That's not hyperbole. I think it is a huge mistake to open up that door. If he doesn't want, and it was very evident too that despite the fact that Nick and Jalen and everybody says they don't pay attention to outside voices, Nick was so over the top after that game. It's like he heard every outside voice.
He said it. He admitted it at one point during that presser. Yeah.
So you just opened up a bunch of other outside voices. I maybe it ends up to be nothing, but I assume there's going to be hiccups with play calling at some point in the 14 games remaining. And now we don't know who's responsible for it. I don't, and maybe it's just Nick's way of protecting his guys ultimately in the end. But where are you? And I guess my question is, I'm rambling. Where is it just Kellen Moore for you? Or are you going to start to question who's calling the plays in big spots?
No, I do question it. And look, I think, Nick Sirianni should be part of like dictating the game strategy in a given moment, but that's not the play call. Like the play call should
that's different.
Yeah, Kellen Moore's play call. But I think that's part of the problem, though, or can be part of the problem with that split there, is maybe it's not always married up or synced up in the way that is optimizing what the Eagles want to do. Case in point, maybe if it was a little synced up better before that 60-yard field goal attempt, not that the Eagles don't try to get the first down there on whatever 3rd and 11 or whatever it was, but maybe there's an option for that play, some kind of check down baked in where, okay, if we're not going to get it, it's not there. Quickly, take a check down, get 6 more yards. So you're kicking a 54-yard field goal instead of that 60-yard field goal there. I think there's times where you wonder, if it's all lined up, and that might be the disadvantage of not having the head coach and strategy dictator also be the play caller.
Yeah, fair point. And the fourth downs as a whole, maybe the piecemealing that, because obviously it's Nick's decision, but maybe Kellen Moore doesn't have conviction on one particular fourth down, and he doesn't have the opportunity to say, you know what, we're not ready for this fourth down. Yeah, and that's why that kind of thing's one of the reasons why I didn't like the setup to begin with. And we'll see how it works out. 2-1 start. Can't complain about that. That's the ironic thing. You go into New Orleans, one of the toughest places to play in this league, against a team averaging 45.5 points. And Dallas Goedert was on, I think, McAfee's show. Saquon Barkley's on Dan Patrick's show, and they're getting Nick Sirianni questions after the 3rd game of the season. To me, that's not a positive. But I digress. At Brandon Gouton Make sure you follow BLG on the X platform. Editor-in-chief, Bleeding Green Nation, must read every day. If you're an Eagles fan, get your morning coffee. Go there to see the latest Eagles news, bleedinggreennation.com. Linebacker play. I'll end it there with you. Zack Baun, great game, terrible game, great game. I think Nakobe Dean wasn't that good the first 2 weeks. I think he got a little bit better. Where are you on the linebacker play of the Philadelphia Eagles?
I mean, the Zack Baun thing is just like hard. It's just like how is that on anyone's bingo board except other than Vic Fangio, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
Howie signed him as an edge rusher. That's how the way he was talking.
That's how Zack Baun expected to be playing this year originally, and now he's like second in the NFL in tackles, which tackles itself isn't like the best stat, but I mean for a guy active. Yeah, well, for a guy who is new to the position, I think it is a great stat because for him to be even able to handle that, and it's clearly not just he's only getting tackles when he's allowing a big run downfield or getting beat in coverage. I mean, he's getting some, TFLs. He's getting tackles for no gain or 1 yard gain or 2 yard, very short gains. You're seeing plays like that. I thought one of the most incredible plays from the game was where he gave up that catch to Alvin Kamara there, but he basically played it perfectly. He couldn't have defended it too much better, short of actually being able to break it up.
Great catch.
It was just an even better catch. To beat great. So to have a player who's able to play downhill like Zack Baun is and stop Kamara a lot of times as a runner, and then be able to also drop back and do that in the same game. I mean, just when's the last time you saw an Eagles linebacker be able to do something like that? It's been a while.
Yeah.
Andrew
Van Ginkel
BLG, you think they're going to try and get him signed soon? I mean, if he keeps playing like this, and how he wants to spend the money,
you better get him signed early.
He would get ahead of it, but maybe he'll get outside the Eagles' price range for linebackers.
I mean, I think Vic Fangio's on board with that, but I don't know how much. Not that the front office hates him or anything, but I don't know how much of a front office signing the Zack Baun thing was. He turns 28 in December, so I don't know what that even looks like for anyone. Does Zack Baun also want to wait, feeling like, hey, maybe I can hit the market again and get a big deal, or does he realize hey, this is a system that really kind of works for me, and I will do well to continue to play in this kind of fit here.
Yeah, but he hasn't made big money yet. If I'm Zack Baun, we all looked at Van Ginkel and said, all right, he was so good Miami. We all went, that's a player they should go get. But Zander and I were talking about it. He got 2 years and $20 million coming off, and he had a Lisfranc injury, so it was probably less than he was going to get. Eagles aren't going to that level of linebacker, are they? I've seen no, but they threw a curveball with Saquon. Could they throw a curveball with Zack Baun if he continues to play like this?
Yeah, I would say less likely than more likely, but maybe also part of this is if you're betting on Fangio being able to find players like this, because he did with Van Ginkel clearly, and he has with Baun here. So maybe they feel like he might be able to scout the league and kind of find another guy for that kind of role. Maybe they're just willing to bet on Jalix Hunt. We know or at least it was reported that Vic Fangio really likes Jalix Hunt and the theory of him at least. Obviously has to prove a lot more, but I think there's enough here, or at least I think there's enough of maybe a confidence in Fangio and an interest in Hunt that it's they might want to just ride it out a little bit.
Great stuff, BLG. Thanks for joining the show today, man. Make sure you guys go and follow Brandon Lee Gowton on Twitter at Brandon Gowton and read all his work at Bleeding Green Nation. Probably the best Eagles site for daily news all the time. So make sure you go check him out at bleedinggreennation.com. BLG, thanks for joining the show, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Thanks, bud.
Yep. There's BLG joining us. Good stuff from Brandon Lee Gowton today. Good stuff from both our guests, I thought, today. Johnny Mack, it was good listening to you and Mike Gill discuss the whole Nick Sirianni stuff, and then good stuff from Brandon Lee Gowton there. We'll see what the Eagles are able to do here coming up to week 4 now, John. It all goes quick, John. We're already at game 4, man. Before we know it, we'll be at game 8 and then game 12, and then we'll be in the playoff. I mean, the season goes by quick.
Man,
so.
that's part of the NFL's popularity. There's not a lot of it
right.
game-wise.
Yep, no doubt.
As opposed to
where are you, John, coming into the week? I mean, you got, I know you're concerned about the games. You think the Bucs
I don't
are
like
going to
the
get
spot.
better,
I don't like the spot. Now, look, if AJ or Devontae are back, I will not. I don't like the spot in general, no matter who's on the field. But if AJ and Devontae, both of them are not, then all hope is lost. If one of them's back, a little bit of hope. If both of them are back for some, that would be a home run. Then you're back in the game. But I don't like the spot. I can't say it enough. This league is, again, it's a week-to-week league, as Mike Gill said, and people need to understand that. And the Buccaneers are coming off such a terrible performance at home. And they're not a bad team. They're not a great team either. It's not like they're going to out-talent the Eagles, but just the way this league is, man, they are going to be motivated to not lay another egg. It's just, I don't like the spot.
We'll see how it plays out this weekend. I do think Eagles advantage Eagles, but we're talking about some big injuries, everybody. So we got to see how they all shake out. We'll see. I want to thank Anjan Gandhi for becoming a member. Thank you for your support of the channel. Appreciate that very much. And then John, a member chat from our man James Carver. If you guys are a member, you do get, I believe, one of these a month. Where you can, it's like a super chat where I'll read it, but I think you get one automatically for being a member. So if you're a member, make sure you use your member chat on a monthly basis. James Carver says, J-Mac, what was Vic's answer regarding Isaiah Rodgers not playing for Slay? Would it have been earlier in game? He was ready, but not ready. Odd Vic answer.
Well, he had surgery on his hand. So, back when he came back, Isaiah was, the first game he was active, it was more of an active for a potential emergency situation. He's getting closer to being 100%. Then he was asked specifically, why did Ringo come in first over Rodgers when Darius Slay got banged up on the dirty penning play. And he was asked if it had to do with Slay's the left corner, if it had to do with that side of the field. Ringo's played more there. Rodgers, they both played right corner and left corner, but Ringo played more there rep wise than Rodgers in the summer. And he said it didn't have to do with that. Ringo was going to be the dime player, so he was more involved with the game plan. They didn't have to use a lot of dime. If you remember a couple weeks ago, he had mentioned that Cooper DeJean wasn't going to play dime anymore. He's just going to be backup nickel as they tried. So Ringo's the dime back. They just didn't use it. He was more prepared in the game plan. So they went with Ringo first. And if it happened earlier in the game or something like that, maybe it would have been a different decision. Maybe Rodgers would have been more involved, but that was why he went the way he went. But one thing we do know now, Quinyon Mitchell ain't moving. So it's going to be difficult for Rodgers or Ringo to get on the field absent an injury, which obviously you don't want with Darius Slay or Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah, good stuff. I think that's the right move, right? Keeping Quinyon on the outside.
Oh, yeah. He's been tremendous. Quinyon Mitchell. Not that he doesn't have hiccups and he gets beat, but overall, for a young corner, I think he leads the NFL in pass deflections. Now he's getting a lot of traffic because people don't throw at Slay and they're trying to take advantage of the rookie, but he's holding up very well. It's all positive with Quinyon Mitchell. And he's not moving.
I think he's been great so far. So good stuff from Quinyon Mitchell. Appreciate everybody in the chat. today. Thank you guys. 113 likes. Can we try and get that to like 150? See if you guys can smash that like button for us on your way out the door today. Appreciate all the members in the chat, all our regular viewers as well. Everybody is appreciated here. So SMD, Abe, Flexing and Steppin, Regal Eagle, Slaggers in here, Illuminati. Appreciate all of you guys. Twiz the Jig is in here. Eric Wisniewski. Appreciate everybody. If I missed you, I didn't mean to miss you. James Carver, I see you, brother. Thank you all for being in the chat today. Hit that like button. Johnny Mac, great show today, man. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning on Birds 365. All right, brother?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Catch you tomorrow on Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.